Hello there, welcome back to my favorite cockpit and welcome to my favorite canyon. This is just a great place to come have a relaxing cruise, some car therapy, and I love coming out here, you know, when I can in the mornings or evenings or any time really. But today is special because I am finally, after like a year and a half of basically broken promises, I'm finally going to tell you everything you need to know about these coilovers. I'll give you my extensive thoughts and even show you the installation. And I love all my modifications, but I will explain to you why these are basically the single most effective favorite modification I have done. So, on that note, let's roll that title and roll back to my house for a proper cup of coffee. So the reason I didn't give you an installation video before is because I was 1,500 miles away from home at my friend's garage borrowing his space. I was pressed for time, didn't know what I was doing, and I was dealing with rusty bolts. So how am I holding a set of unused, uninstalled coilovers? Well, my friend Ethan got them, the exact same ones. So this is my review of the MeisterR ZetaCRD coilovers. Review, installation, everything you need to know. I'm caffeinated. Let's go back and hit that canyon. So we are starting in the stock form of an NC to Miata. Now, I will say this is the NC with suspension package,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So, not quite as bad as the NC without the suspension package. That's a truly lifted 4x4.
Yes.
This one's just still not great.
Yeah.
Body roll.
It's floaty.
It is very floaty. On one hand, this is like a Mercedes compared to my car as far as ride comfort, but yeah, so the suspension package is sought after because it comes with the limited slip differential, the Bilstein struts, and the shock tower brace. The Bilsteins are what is like not really worth riding home about.
Yeah.
Technically, they're the slightest bit improvement over the stock shocks, maybe, but they start hitting deterioration around 70, 80,000 miles. You're at 78,000 miles. It's about time. I actually did mine at 66,000.
Yeah.
They were already leaking pretty bad.
Dang.
So it's time for you to do something.
This is preventative maintenance.
This is preventative maintenance.
Yeah, look at that. It's not any other reason.
That's what you tell your partner.
Yes, exactly.
Going into this curve, you're just like,
yeah, you can feel the float.
Yeah, just no confidence.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's still objectively a sports car.
Yeah.
This is no Honda CR-V taking into the canyons.
True.
But it's relatively soft. It's mushy. It is comfortable. I'll give them that. That's part of what the engineers designed it to be. Whee!
It's worthy of the boat title.
This is a boat. Proper boat.
Yep.
So yeah, the NC, I get the boat, terminology, but it really is amazing how much doing coilovers or suspension in general, shocks and springs, sway bars, that could all be a huge improvement. I was really torn on whether to do coilovers or sway bars first. Sway bars really do fix body roll.
Yeah.
But coilovers do a lot, and that's why we're here today. So, this is no CUV, no SUV, like, it is as the engineers designed it, right? So why the hell would we change it? Well, because frankly, the engineers design with balance in mind. They're trying to balance comfort and a little bit of performance, daily driving capabilities, and even keeping that true 50-50 weight distribution feel. But like many Miata enthusiasts, we like to tweak it a bit more towards the performance side, even if it's a daily driver like mine. So suspension modifications are a really great way to improve those dynamics from the factory. I know everyone says, oh, the engineers knew what they were doing, and they did, but like I said, performance. We want to maybe fix some of that body roll that the Miatas are known for. Yes, the NC is considered the boat, but all Miatas are really prone to that intense body roll, which you saw from that last little driving clip. We're gonna fix that. Plus, the other thing it does, make it look a little better. I mean, look at this wheel gap. You can fit so much in there, versus mine is definitely a bit lower. So when I talk about suspension, I'm really referring to, you know, the coilover assembly or springs and shocks, as well as the sway bars, and even handling is really improved by wheels and tires. So to recap, you have 3 major components to handling: coilovers, sway bars, wheels and tires. Really doing any of those helps, doing 2 of them helps, but doing all 3 is really the sweet spot. Selfish plug, if you haven't seen my video on these wheels and tires, go watch that. And on that note, like and subscribe so you don't miss my upcoming content on sway bars. But for today, we are addressing what I think was the biggest single, most effective modification, which are the coilovers. Unboxing.
Yes, the
Ethan,
exciting part.
Open your Christmas present.
Ah, I've been excited,
that
dude.
you bought for yourself.
I did. Oh, we might actually need. Oh, it's a box in a box. So yeah.
Oh, here we go. Knife.
Hell yeah.
So these are again the MeisterR ZetaCRDs. There are a couple MeisterR coilovers.
Yeah.
And when you got these from Moss, you actually asked them about the other options, which
Yeah.
are what, the club race?
The club race ones, yeah.
So why'd you go with these?
So the club race ones. Ooh, look at that. Get a shot of that. They're so pretty.
Oh my gosh.
So
many peanuts.
Yeah, the club race ones. They're more for track. They're stiffer, and there was, you know, scientific terms I don't remember because I'm not prepared. But basically, they are just stiffer, and like there's a way that they there's like a preload or a postload or something. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, since I want to pretend like I'll drive my car on the track. It's like once or twice a year, and mostly on the street. But the track ones, they don't hold like bumps and potholes as well as these ones.
Yeah.
And here in Colorado, the roads aren't always super great.
Our roads are rough. It's beautiful, but
Yeah.
our roads are rough. So yeah, these are nicely, I mean, this is probably a pretty simple unboxing. It's just,
Yeah.
there's the assemblies. That's one of the front ones, I want to say.
Sure. They look
And
good though.
Yeah, here's a rear one. It's a little bit shorter.
Yep.
Side by side. Okay, you're the one with the knife, and I'm the one who paper cut myself.
Aha!
Spanner adjustment
go.
tools and the nut things, which some coilovers don't include these. It's nice that these do, so you can actually ditch the ones that your car can.
Oh, sick.
And instructions. So, laying it all out together, that's everything. So it comes with these instructions. They're actually not the most clear instructions. They're available online as well. There are other people that have other instructions for other coilovers. There's also other YouTube videos. I know Zeke from Miata channel something just did an installation on these as well, which is cool. So I'm gonna try to do my own, and we'll see how much fun we have. Is that an NB? Wow. Miata enthusiasts everywhere.
So I was looking at coils and was looking between a few, and I was hanging out with this gentleman behind the camera a few weeks ago and drove his car, and I was like, this is exactly how I want my car to feel. And so I just bought the exact same coilovers the next week. So, and you know, they just look good. And I've never heard anything bad about them. Like every review I've ever seen on these is just like, yeah, they're great. So I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna buy them. So I did.
It's a good balance because you can spend way more and get like more comfort with the daily
Yeah.
driving. You can spend less and get that stiff feeling, but then every pothole in Colorado,
just-
you're like,
yeah.
what have I done?
No,
So
it should be a good balance.
this is a great balance. Let's get your car in the garage, prop it up, throw these suckers on. Take us like what, 6 minutes?
Yeah, I'm thinking 8 minutes total.
All right, welcome to the shop. We are going to now do the installation. The first thing we should do is from the center of the hub to the kind of this part is measuring ride height. We're at 14 1/4, and from my memory, these things came with like 12.5 inches ride height, so it's slammed out of the box.
Nice.
So once we install it, we'll actually raise it a bit probably, because again, Colorado roads. But that's a cool way to like measure. So mine is now sitting at 13 all around. So it lowered it by about an inch, inch and a quarter on my car. So we're gonna not waste your guys' time because, I mean, I've done this before, but we're gonna like make sure we know how to do it. So we're gonna install one half by ourselves, and then we'll show you guys how to do the other half once we figure it out.
We're warmed up.
Once we're warmed up, yeah. And my gosh, what perfect weather for this. Before we get it in the air though, it's good to undo the lug nuts, or at least break them loose, because especially the fronts are really hard in the air unless you have someone use the brake pedal. The other thing you want to do is take the trunk liner out. I guess your keys are in there, but take the trunk liner out, because you have to take the trunk liner out to get to the top of the rear top hats. So, all right, so once you take out all these little push pins, behind here you do have to undo this, which is the emergency trunk latch. Wait, that's what that is. This is the light. So 2 fasteners, but then this thing is free. Hey Ethan, how do you feel about this ride height?
It's perfect, yeah.
This
We'll
is
go with the off-road build, dude.
Yeah, crossovers are really popular for a reason, and it's not the 5 seats.
No, it's not.
I think it's going to be way easier to raise the ride height off the car. So all you have to do is undo this lower collar, and that frees up this thing, and then it lets this freely spin, which would have been so much work on the car, because on the car you have to spin this whole assembly like a quarter turn at a time. It took me so long to do mine. It's still doable, but this just freely spins. So to raise it, which again, we're raising it because these out of the box are like a full 1.5 inches or almost 2 inches lower than stock, which is looks kind of cool, but Colorado roads, right? So I'm basically raising it about 1 inch, which I went a little bit too far, but that way, and it's almost 1-to-1, not quite. So extending this 1 inch doesn't quite do 1 inch on the car ride height, but it's pretty close. So we're gonna use that as a starting measure, because once you're on the car, you can of course adjust ride height. But instead of doing a million spins while it's on the car, we're just gonna do small tweaks later. So there we are. Cameron, as you know, many times when we're working on cars, I crack open a beer because it's just going terribly. Today is awesome. Ethan's car is rust-free essentially. So every bolt just comes out and I'm just thrilled. Also, how did I get in Colorado? I don't know, don't ask questions. Here are the shocks side by side. Front next to front, that's pretty crazy how different they are. Rear next to rear, super crazy how different they are. You can even see that here in the trunk. So on that side is still the OEM one, sticks up pretty far. On this side, the aftermarket MeisterR ones, those are the adjustment knobs. So you have to actually remove the trunk liner to adjust them to be harder or softer, unless you get the extension things which like pull it out here, which is awesome if you can get them. I wish these coilovers came with those extensions. They can't be more than a few bucks for them to make. I don't know why they don't just include them, but hey, I guess some people don't care. So some people have race cars with no trunks. But yeah, while we're in here, let me show you. I have to remove a couple metal things. Basically this side on the driver's side, this thing. And then this thing, which is a Sirius XM antenna, has to come out of that side to give you enough room to access those bolts. So that's all there is in the trunk. Pretty easy. Let's come around this side. I'll show you down here in the rear. That's the new one installed. Looks pretty good. And I can walk you through this really quick. There's 2 bolts above in the trunk that you have to access. 1 bolt from down under here. Why are they different? I don't know. But the one under here is a 12. The ones up top are 14s. So get your wrenches out. Down here, we had to actually remove the bolt that holds this end is a 17, and then this is a 14, I think, for the sway bar. It really helps to get the sway bar lower end link off, so you can rotate the sway bar out of the way. And you just kind of thread the thing out. We'll show videos of that in a second, but I'm just walking through the process. Up on the front, side note number 427. It's easier to take the brake calipers off to get kind of a bit easier access. On the front, you actually have to remove the middle brake caliper bolt, or not brake caliper bolt, brake line bolt, because you have to make this whole upper control arm swing freely. So the front's a bit more complicated than the rear, because you have to take these out, which are 17s, and the lower ones out, which are also 17s. You'll need 2 wrenches because they kind of spin freely otherwise. And also the sway bar end link. Only one of them has to come out. You just have to disconnect the sway bar from the actual assembly, because this whole assembly comes loose, and that's how you pull this thing out. All 3 bolts are on top this time. So under the hood, you have to delete the sound tube. I mean, not like fully delete it. You can do that too, but you have to take it off to get to the top hat bolts on the driver's side front. So to do that, this screw right up here, this screw right up here should be loosened. This thing just pops out of right there, and then this screw to loosen this thing, which pulls off of there. That sounds maybe kind of confusing, but it all comes apart, and you just get it out of the way. And this can actually come apart, which is, there we go, just like that. That lets you pull everything out of the way to actually get to the top hats. You have to remove the, what do you call it? This thing that goes there, the strut tower brace, yeah. So I don't think sport models have that, but the ones in the suspension package do have that for sure. Some people have aftermarket ones. So that's pretty much how easy it is to do. We did one side off camera to figure it out. or for me refigure it out because I did this like 2 years ago. So now we'll show you in process on the other side. Let's go. So Ethan is turning the car accessory on to turn the wheel, yep, a little bit more, to the, I guess, opposite of the side you're working on. So work on the right side and he's turning it to the left. That helps us get to, and you can turn it off now, that helps us get to these 17 mil bolts for the brakes. So like I mentioned, you don't have to take the calipers off, but we are actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. PETA, don't get involved. No birds were harmed during this film. We are also doing brakes today, just while we're in here. I've already made a video on that. Everyone knows how to do brakes in theory. So we're going to take the caliper off, and first we'll actually take this middle bolt out, which is a 14, I think, or a 12. That's a 12.
That's a 12.
Yeah, which is that one.
Oh, I guess I do have.
And then 17 next for the, that's where we use the big Ugga Dugga, I think.
We did.
Yeah, the hose is long enough so the caliper
ground.
can just sit on the ground. Now we can just take the rotor off because that's what we're doing today anyways.
It'll be a Phillips head screw.
Phillips head screw was there, it's not there anymore. And there you go. With the rotors off, you do have a bit more room to work, so that's pretty great. Now we also have to do the upper control arm bolts, which are both 17s. And oh, while we're in here, this has to come off just so this moves just enough for this bolt to come out. One of those engineers didn't talk to the maintenance guys situations. Oh yeah.
Easy.
Easy. So that moves just enough now to get that bolt out. So now 17s for the big thing, which that probably won't work, but. So the upper control arm bolts are now out. It is free falling, and we actually took this out earlier. So if you're trying to do one side and then the other, it's best to just take the sway bar out on both sides right away, because that lets the sway bar flex enough for you to get this whole thing loose enough to get that out. Trust me, it all works together. Also, before you do many of the other bolts, do this, I don't know if it's ABS or speed sensor. That's nestled right back in there, also a 12. For some reason, it's a 12, just like the brake line bolts, I guess. Don't forget that, otherwise you'll be like pulling on this like crazy. Don't ask us how, we know. But that's pretty much it for here besides these bottom ones. Now up here is just basically this thing goes across up there and over. It's 3 different parts. You do have to take the top part off first, which I already did because we had to do that to get to that side. Once the top part's off, you can take the other ones off. 8 total 14 mil bolts up here, just for the brace, strut tower brace. And unlike over there, you don't have any sort of sound tube stuff in your way right here, so that's great. But now this whole thing just slides right off. Now you have access to the 3 upper control arm, or top hat bolts. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. 3 top hat bolts, and once those pull out, you can just pull the whole shock out. And we'll show you how we twist it out in a second. Nice. So don't forget to retain that for later. And don't put the bolts on before you put that on. We made that mistake earlier. We made a lot of mistakes on the other side, and we're showing you now how to avoid those mistakes.
That's right.
Yeah, so this whole thing should slide out just like that. So you just press the whole thing down enough to pull that free, and then I think forward is, or no, that works.
Yeah,
yep.
Go down a little and then.
So we have to pull this thing out to let it rotate. You can go forward or backward, it doesn't actually matter. Both work. So it's out, it's free. There's the new one, and it's perfect.
Already adjusted.
Beauty. Already height adjusted. I think the measurements were 80. I don't remember. Basically, I raised them 1 inch according to this off the car. So we'll see how that translates once we put it on the car. Also, very important to note, which we totally remembered on the other side, there's a plastic piece on the top of the front top hats, which needs to be moved over to the new top hats because that prevents certain squeaks and rattles. Not sure if I remember that on my car, which may be why there's some occasional noises. But there it is. So now we just redo everything, slide that in there. And the new ones are just a bit easier to get back in, especially on the rear, but front too, because they're just a bit smaller.
We're wedged in place anyway.
Now we're in. So now just redo all the bolts. They do recommend tops first, but not fully tightened. MeisterR officially recommends not like torquing down the tops until you have the car on the ground. So we'll just put them in there. MeisterR was nice enough to include new bolts for the top hats, all the top mounted ones. So the only exception is the rear that you do from the bottom, which is a full screw.
You want to grab that guy?
Oh, you're right. The thing we said not to forget earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead and throw that on there.
I put that out of view. So that was my fault.
There we go. Now we can put these on. Slightly tightened, but not torqued. So now we just redo everything down here kind of in reverse order. So we'll, I guess, put the bottom bolt in first.
Yep.
And then tighten, put all the other bolts in. And the last things you put back on are the brake line pieces and the ABS speed sensor thing. After you do the lower bolt, that's probably the best time to do the sway bar end link, which just sits right in there too. There we go, the front's in. That's done. Like I said, we're gonna do brakes in a second here, so like we haven't put the caliper back on, but as far as the whole tower assembly, it's good. And once again, we're not gonna tighten these fully on the top until we get the car on the ground. And same with the rears, and we're also going to check all the knobs for the hard versus soft at the end. So, onto the rear. So 17 mil takes this back one off. Unlike the front, it's just one bolt instead of two, but this actually still sits on a thing through here. So you can take the bolt out without worrying about it shooting off or something. We also already removed the sway bar end link to do the other side. So just like the front, it helps to do both sway bar end links at the same time so you can let the sway bar not be in your way effectively. The back, it's so nice having fewer bolts to worry about. Just that one bolt down there, the sway bar of course, and then one of the upper top hats is from the bottom and it's the outside rear, if that makes sense.
This
Right
one
there. We keep tightening
We're just
bolts.
we're just knocking all the crud off of there. Edit all that out, editor Jordan.
All right, I'll edit that out, I promise. For some reason, like we said earlier, the tops are 14s, the bottoms are 12. I don't know. What were they thinking? But those two right there.
This one, and there's one back there.
Nice as that side has no fuel line versus this one has the fuel filler thing, so it's a bit more annoying. Still not bad with this taken out, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
with an extension you can actually get up there. Okay.
extensions help.
But you won't even need it back here probably.
So there's a lot of geometry happening back here, as you can tell. But to pop this thing off, sometimes I've used screwdriver, or like on my car I use a crowbar. But that has to slide off the bolt to then come loose. And we have a hammer. The screwdriver right in there, plus the hammer, helps work it out. It's off.
Ding.
Don't forget, this washer sits right here between this and this.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. It's just a lot of finagling, and eventually, there we go. Now it's out of the top-ish. And yeah, if you rotate the coil, it can get around some of these bars. And if you rotate enough, it'll come out. And the new one is so much easier to get back in. And you pull it out the top. There we go. Stupid Bilsteins. And these are not symmetrical in the rear, so make sure you put the the empty hole on the outside rear.
It even has a sticker on the bottom. I didn't notice that before.
Right. Okay, good. We did it right. And feed it through. Oh, we put it down on there first, on the bottom. And then the top can rotate a little bit, which helps you line up the bolts. There we go. The last two remaining included screws, bolts, nuts. All right. So, Cameron had a great suggestion. If you don't have a friend, hopefully you have a friend. If you don't have a friend,
At least not one that's willing to help you.
one that's not willing to help for pizza and beer, you can use a jack to lift this thing up while you're putting those top bolts in. And then there's one bolt that goes in the bottom. Now, just like the front, you don't want to like really tighten or torque the top ones. Just get them tight but not Guten tight, if you know what I'm saying. And then put that back on. Do we put the washer in?
Yep, the washer's still on here.
Oh, good. It never came out. Okay.
And there's also another washer from the other side, for the bolt side. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
And then we're gonna do a light ugga chugga just because I don't want to twist it by my hand. The other way.
All right, we just put the sway bar back in, which is a bit easier now that the car is effectively lowered a bit.
Yeah, when they're both sides of the same height, then that's when the sway bar is not under tension.
Yeah,
But
so
when one suspension, like stock versus aftermarket on the other side, that's when you got to undo both because you're just going to be fighting it all day.
so it does make sense to do. I'd say in hindsight, would you say it's better to do rears and then fronts or vice versa?
Oh yeah, do an end of the car.
Do an
first
end of the car,
instead
yeah,
the side
instead
first.
of lefts and then rights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we didn't quite do that right, but you know, it was all for the sake of research and science and things. So we got this Miata here, Japanese Miata, Japanese car, Japanese car, Japanese car, old BMW, and there's liquid coming out of it.
Looks like a lot of liquid.
I'm glad I own a Japanese car. Anyways, now so now we're going to torque everything down, and I can put the factory torque specs on top. The upper control arm is 62 to 72 pound-feet of torque, and then the lower bolt is 58 to 76. But for all three of these bolts, we're using 65 because it fits within the range of all the ranges. Sway bar end links are 32 to 45, so we chose 40. And I don't actually know the torque spec for the like ABS speed sensor thing, but Guten tight, how about that?
Done.
German spec. All right, so torquing the lower rear shock tower bolt thing, it's like 56 to 70 or something like that. So we're doing 65 as the torque spec. And we torqued everything, tightened everything. The only things we haven't torqued are, again, the top hat bolts, which means once we put those back in is when we have to put all this back in, this stuff all back together. So we're not like quite done, but that's all easy, honestly. We're on the downward slope. So the next step, the last step, hopefully, is to put it on the ground. And there we go, it's on the ground just like that with magic. So we'll have to see where the ride height's at with some measuring. I'm gonna say it's probably a bit tall, honestly. So now that it's on the ground, you just do all three of these bolts on the top and the two top ones on the back and the trunk. And they're all 40 pound-feet of torque. Well, 34 to 46, so I'm just averaging that at 40. And that's all there is to it. So, well, as I mentioned, you have to have the car on the ground to tighten all the top things. And before you put everything back together, you want to make sure you have your ride dampness set. So make sure you twist the knobs at the top. For reference, mine and now Ethan's are 12 clicks from hard. There's 32 clicks total. So I twisted it all the way to hard and then 12 clicks back. Do that before you put the trunk back together. And there you have it. And there's a Polestar. You can do what we did and add coilovers aftermarket, or what he did and buy a car that has Olin's coilovers already on it.
Olin's is the way to pronounce it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, you're such a snob. Car is fully put back together, just like typical city cruise. One person did it, the other four stood around.
Yep.
But the one that was doing it was always different. So Hey.
Except for me, I came in at the end and did.
That's true, yeah. Typical Polestar owners. Anyways, we're going to go quickly bed these brakes, drive it a bit just to make sure everything settles, come back, remeasure, and then change the ride height a bit, which shouldn't be too bad. It just takes a little bit of wrenching, but it's drivable.
Hard part's done.
How's it feel?
Good.
Great.
Excited.
Let's go drive. Great. Woo!
So much better.
This feels so great. Checking for any noises, seeing if anything feels off balance. Obviously it won't feel like necessarily perfect because we've affected the suspension geometry a little bit with adding new shocks. So you basically need to get in alignment at some point. It's not like critical life and death, but like ASAP. It's tracking straight. I'm not hearing any like creaks or anything rattling. It should get even a bit more planted once we fix the ride height. So as it turns out, when I adjusted the ride height before we installed it, I overcompensated because mine were too low and then I overdid it to make yours too high. So, which actually it's still a tiny bit lower than stock, but not crazy. So gonna go fix the ride height and we'll show you how to do that on the car and then we're done. All right, got the wheel off the car. So to adjust them, you have to loosen the bottom collar, which is right down here. There we go. And actually, before we loosen it, let's measure it with the caliper. This is a great tool to have for measuring, just to figure out exactly what you're doing and how to match both sides really pretty closely. We actually loosened it up to the point and then measured it with the calipers and then lowered it down to that point, if that makes sense. And rotating this way lowered it. In theory, the math checks out. So it was at a 97 millimeter gap here. We've lowered it down to 85 millimeter. So we'll see if that actually translates to the ride height. Yeah, we'll throw it down, see how it looks. All right,
Moment of truth.
lower down. Let's see what it looks like. NC1 ride height, NC2 ride height, and now it's a lot more even. Just finished torquing everything down. Don't forget to torque wheels. I've forgotten that before. Cameron's forgotten that before. It's, you know, it's a thing. But torque them all down, about 85 pound-feet. And yeah, so it sits as it is, about half an inch lower than stock. The plan is for Ethan to drive it around. Supposedly there's about a 100-mile break-in period. We'll see.
About how far I have to go home anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you live about 100 miles away.
Yep.
And yeah, break in, settle in, and then we'll see what happens later. We can always adjust the ride height again, but right now they all sit perfectly even, about 13 7/8 from the center of the hub to the top of the fender, or to the fender. So that's about where it's at, which is about 3/4 of an inch higher than my car, but then again, mine's settled. So this will be an experiment. We'll see how much yours settled, and after that, go get in alignment.
Yeah, exactly.
So because Ethan needs an alignment and some time for his coilovers to settle, I'll be doing the review on my car, which has been settling for a while. But here we are, the MeisterR ZetaCRDs. I absolutely love these. Let's talk about performance first. Rolling into a corner, you get a lot of confidence. The car is just so much more planted. I was gonna do sway bars first, and I know sway bars can really help that body roll as well, but these really do a pretty good job as is. But as I mentioned, these are just balanced. Not only do they balance the car, they are the right balance, I think, for bang for buck. These seem to strike that balance and give me that like daily driving comfort, but also give me the intense rigidity in the corners if I need it. But you can spend less money and get that stiffness for performance, but then you're sacrificing the daily driving comfort. Or you can spend more money and have a lot more comfort with daily driving and maybe a bit easier adjustability. And some coilovers are easier to adjust the height on. Honestly, for me, it's kind of a set it and forget it type of thing. I just set them, and it's kind of like a bit more on the stiffness side for the 32 clicks of adjustment. And the ride height, I just set that and forget it literally the day I got them. I did have to raise them a bit out of the box, so it wasn't like quite out of the box perfection, but they are just so good. And I am so thrilled now for the last 30,000 miles of driving on these coilovers. Part of the lack of me adjusting them though is due to the challenge of what it takes to adjust them. You have to take off the OEM strut tower brace, which I have, to get to the knobs, and then take out the trunk liner because I never got the actual extensions for that. So if I would stop being cheap or lazy and get the extensions and get a shock tower brace that lets me access the knobs a bit easier, I'd probably do a lot more adjustments on the fly. You know, a track day or autocross day, stiffen it up, or even a canyon day like this, and then soften it for my road trips that you know I love to do. But that being said, these are so fantastic. I have so much confidence in the corners, and that's without even having sway bars. Now, wheels and tires, again, are a big component for grip. Go watch that video if you missed me already mentioning that video. But I have no regrets with these. So, final thoughts on today. I mean, we made a whole day out of it.
Yeah.
Which I don't entirely blame the suspension. We did brakes, rotors, and pads. I mean, we did it all.
We had to go buy pads, and
we made coffee,
Yeah.
we made food, we
Yep.
ate food, so,
Yep.
you know. But after we did one side, it was genuinely pretty easy to do the other side.
Yeah.
So hopefully this guide helps you. If anyone has questions, throw them in the comments, and we'll try to answer them. But yeah, what do you think? You've driven it around a little bit.
Yeah, it is like night and day difference. It's by far, that's like the best thing you do. First time, like, yeah. I mean, we drove it around and I was just like instantly smiling. It feels like a proper sports car now, so I'm
That's
happy.
what I was saying. So coilovers are my single most effective mod to this car that I was like, that was the best thing I've done. Granted, I just want to keep doing things.
Yeah, that's
You want
the
to keep
problem.
doing things.
Yeah.
You probably want wheels and tires next.
Yeah,
but-
wheels are next. Yeah.
I think it's perfect, and it's not just ride height. I mean, some people buy these coilovers, they raise it to stock ride height for some crazy
Yeah.
reason, but it still rides better because it's stiffer around the corners.
Yeah, we only lowered it like half an inch or so from factory, but it's just like, it feels like a completely different car, honestly. It feels like how I want it to feel. And I mean, they're not that expensive for the value you get.
No, I think you're
10
thrilled
out
with
of
the
10.
thrilled with the purchase. There's, like we said, you can spend more money. If
Yeah.
your budget allows that, great, go for it. You can spend less money. If you want low and stiff,
Yeah.
you can do that on a budget. But for people who drive these daily, like us more or less,
Yeah.
it's this is a good balance.
Yeah, I think the impressive thing is what I was saying is like, it's stiffer, but it's still smoother than it was before. Like, it's taking the bumps better than I was with my stock shocks. And it could be just their age, they could be going out, but like, it's gliding across things, but it's stiffer, it handles great, and I'm happy. I'm very
Exactly.
happy.
So, thanks so much for watching another Flywheel Films video with Ethan's little red rocket. I don't know what to call it, but I'm a dragon.
Yeah, the
he roasts
dragon.
coffee, which is cool. So his license plate's cool. My new license plate's hopefully coming. And yeah, we'll see this car again soon. We'll keep you guys posted another video, just like how it feels after a while, kind of a long-term review. I've already given you my long-term review, but we'll see how his settle, because I'm curious about that after the alignment and everything.
You'll see more of me.
Yeah, we'll see more of him. So, cheers.